So, what I'm about to tell you is one of the first experiences I ever had when I first came to Scotland to live. Okay, I live here now, I spend my life here, it's an absolutely fantastic place, but I'd heard a lot of stories about Scotland before I came here, because I'm a spiritual person and I'm a psychic medium. I'd read a lot of the folklore, a lot of the tales of sort of fairy circles and the castles here, all the mystical things that happen in Scotland. I'd read everything I could get my hands on. This is long before I moved up here. So when the opportunity came to come and live here, I was so excited about coming. I was like, yes, I cannot wait to experience some stuff. One of the best experiences, but also one of the worst experiences I've ever experienced since being here, and I've experienced plenty since, absolute loads, was one of the first times I was up here. I'd been visiting. So let's go back. When I first started seeing my partner, I used to come up and visit a lot. And we used to stick to one area. Where she lived, we used to stick to that area a lot. But there came an opportunity when I went down to go up north a bit, go and visit another area where I'd never been before, and there was woodland there, and it was a bit more rural, and it was a bit more like the Scotland that you read about. Not really a city centre or anything like this, the more sort of rural, yes, this is mystical sort of stuff, a lot of mystery and stuff. So we went in the car and we went up north and we went for a day out, okay? And we were staying with family at the time. I'd never been to this place before and I was very excited to explore it and see what happened. So we go into the woods and we get the dogs and we go for a day out in the woods. And all day I had this feeling. Now I'm very intuitive and I see spirit. I wasn't seeing any spirit in these woods, but I was very aware of spirit being there. Something very powerful, something very sort of overbearing. Even now it sends like the chills up my spine a bit, okay? We go for a walk around these woods and I said to my partner, I've got a kind of an uneasy feeling in my chest that I can't explain it, but I just feel like there's something in the air, there's something around here that I'm not used to back home, you know? Back home, I was used to the sort of energy. Up here, this was a whole new thing for me. Very powerful energy, brand new thing. So we end up getting back to the place where we're staying. We're having a meal, having some tea. And loads of noises start coming from the house next door. And there's banging, and there's cursing, and there's swearing. And I turn to the lady we're staying with and I say to her, is everything okay with next door? And she says, oh, the guy next door is a nightmare. He's constantly bad-tempered, constantly moody. The next thing you know, this music goes really loud from next door. He's banging about, the music's blaring out, and I'm saying to her, where's this music coming from? And she's like, it's his TV. He always puts the TV on really loud. He's really bad-tempered. He's never nice to me. He's always, and she says, and I always get this horrible feeling when I'm around him, like this really horrible, nasty feeling. So I was kind of like, okay, that's a little bit odd. We go to bed that night and we've had a great meal, we've had a fantastic day out. I got this little horrible feeling in the woods, but it was nothing. It kind of surpassed in the afternoon. We go to bed that night, I'm laying in bed and I'm fast asleep, I'm like this with my eyes shut, I'm just enjoying this sort of dream time. And all of a sudden, I wake up with this sense in the room, like something is in there. My partner's fast asleep, so I don't wake her up. And I look around the room and I notice it. In the corner of the room, there's a dark figure. Now, even now, this makes me kind of, you know, it was stood in the corner. And if you've ever seen the film Pan's Labyrinth, the guy with the horns, the stone guy, whatever it is, it looked like that, but it was brown. I distinctly remember the colour of it. It was brown and it was sort of like a wet dog look, like hairy but wet and shaggy sort of looking. And it came and stood at the foot of the bed and it just leaned over and stared at me right in the face. Now I'm in the bed and I'm used to seeing creepy things, I've seen it my whole life, but not like this. This was, I'm used to seeing kind of demonic things like this, entities, all that kind of thing, used to that. This was something else. I'd never seen anything like this before and it scared the shit out of me, I'll admit it, okay? So this thing stands at the end of the bed and it stares at me and it's sort of, there's an intuitive thing around it. It doesn't communicate at all, but it's kind of curious about who I am and why I'm there, and it comes up around the side and to the side of the bed where I'm at, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this thing? I have no idea what it is. It's frightening the life out of me. I'm dying to wake my partner up, but I can't wake her up because if it scares me, it will really scare her. And it sort of looks at me and then it backs off. It kind of backs off a bit. And I get a bit confident. As soon as it backs up, it's a bit like an animal who's going after you, sort of hunting after you. And as soon as you show you're not afraid to the animal, it kind of backs off a bit. It was a bit like that. As soon as I kind of got a bit of courage, started using my light and things like this, it backed off a bit. And when it backed off a bit, I got a bit more confident, you know. I was a bit like, nothing cocky, because you don't push these things. I didn't know what it was, so, but I just showed a bit of dominance. I just showed that I wasn't afraid, because I've seen scary things in the past, and I know that love works. So if you start liking and loving yourself in these kind of moments, it started to back off a bit, and it started to walk back around the side of the bed, and it sort of turned around like this and stared at me, and then it left. And I thought, what the hell was this? Now, at the time, I never mentioned it. I didn't mention it to the person we were staying with. I never mentioned it to my partner. But I was kind of, in the back of my head all week, I was like, what was this thing? This thing was really sort of not nice. So let's fast forward years later. And I've been doing a couple of cleansing jobs around Scotland and getting rid of things out of people's houses and doing all this kind of stuff with the work that I do. And I decided to go and cleanse the house where we stayed that night, okay? I go to the house and I go and cleanse it all. And the house next door had been sold now. The guy had moved out. I think he'd passed on or he'd moved away. So he had left the house and the energy was completely different. So I said to the occupier of the house, I said, do you want me to do next door as well? Do you want me to knock on and say? Because something in me that night when this thing came to me, I knew it was from the house next door. There was something evil about the guy and turning up the music, and he was always pissed off and bad tempered, and he was always kind of, so I knew it was coming from that energy. And when I went into the house, I instantly knew. Let's rewind a little bit. So my partner had gone in first. Now my partner's a bit intuitive herself, and she'd cleansed the mum's house a bit and said, can you come and finish it off? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So she'd gone in there and she said, you're gonna have to do this house as well. And I remember now, she was like, yeah, you're gonna have to do this house as well because the energy in this house is off. There's something not right with the energy in this house. So I was like, yeah, let's go for it. So I remember going in there and thinking, yeah, something was around that guy or something was going on there, major. But even now, sometimes when I get in bed at night in my own house and it's nice and the energy's fantastic in here and I keep it all good and I sage all the time and I do all the rituals I need to do to keep my house safe as possible. But even now, sometimes when I'm in bed at night, I remember it. I remember this thing sort of creeping in and staring at me, and it still makes me feel like, geez, what? And I've dealt with demonic things, I've dealt with all this kind of thing. I have no idea what this thing was, but I instantly remember the fear when I first saw it, and it was like something I've never experienced since. It was kind of like the fear that freezes you to the core. It was kind of like, I can't move, I can't breathe, I can't speak. It's only when it came around the side of the bed where I got a bit confident. And I remembered, use your light, love yourself, light yourself, use your heart, you'll be fine. When I did that, it backed off. But I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't have done that. And to this day, I kind of think, thank you, whoever's up there listening, for helping me that night, because I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't used that. And it was sort of defended me. It helps. Using the heart helps. Love helps everything, doesn't it? So that's my story. Now, since then, I've dealt with hundreds of things. I've been here 15 years. I've dealt with everything you can think of. But I've never come across something like that again. Never, ever, ever have I come across that again. I wouldn't like to come across it again, if I'm very honest. But that's my story. That's the one thing that always sticks in here. The one thing that I kind of think, that was something a bit different to what I'm used to, okay? It's never left me. It constantly stays there. And whenever I deal with things bad, or things come up with in people's houses that people are experiencing themselves, there's always that little thing in the back of my mind that's like, it could be that thing again. That could be back, you know? So I'm just hoping that it doesn't come back. But if anybody's experienced something like this themselves, something similar, that they can't explain, you know, just something like this horn thing, whatever this was. And it, like I said before, I've dealt with the demon thing. It's not that. I've dealt with that. It's not that. This is just something entirely different. It wasn't an animal. It was an entity, but it looked like an animal, like a heart, exactly like the thing. If you've seen Pan's Labyrinth, exactly the same as that from Pan's Labyrinth, but brown, shaggy looking, kind of. Ugh. So, if you ever experience anything like it yourselves, let us know in the comments below, definitely. Okay? You take care. See you later.